Cool. It's starting now, so we're at 3 seconds. Um, cool. So today we have the one and only Bryan Dam. Thank you for joining us.
The world is happy there's only one of me, I assure you.
So yeah, man. Like I said, thanks for coming.
Oh, my pleasure.
So you know, Bryan and I go back a couple years. Um,
Absolutely.
2021 is when I joined a software company called Recast, um, and Bryan was already there. So
Yeah, you
got to me.
we were just talking. You joined a rough situation, which is a small software company that was basically run by system administrators in engineering, and we all had more opinions than we have fingers. And here's Fabian, who and like you had some experience, but you were not
No,
like
I was like
yeah.
1 or 2 years in.
Right, you were definitely pretty junior, and he had to come in, and that was all right during like a lot of early
COVID, like
days for Intune, yeah,
yep.
pre-COVID, and then like all the early days of Intune, and you had to try and like make sense of everything while there's these guys building these tools that have been doing this for 15 years and all have like strong opinions on everything. So kudos to you that you're still there. You haven't rage quit or drunk yourself to death.
Hey, if
Never
what's
too late to start though.
it built tough skin. So
Okay.
it was
Oh
awesome.
gosh,
It
yeah.
was awesome. So you know, trial by fire, especially in the
Yeah.
beginnings. You yeah. So, but the show is not about me. It's
Okay.
about you.
What if we did
So
make it about you, though? What if I just interviewed you?
we we'll do episode three. Will
Oh,
be
that's okay.
we'll flip the
No,
script.
season three. Season three is when you do the. Season two ends with the clip show, and then season three is where we somebody comes back and interviews you.
So I did a little digging and I saw that you
Oh
started
gosh.
your software endpoint career. I don't know if software is the right word, but let's
Okay.
say endpoint career
Hmm.
at Gordon Food Service.
Sort of, but no. So I have a real interesting um, career trajectory early on. So I actually graduated with a 4-year degree in software engineering. So that was my that's what I thought I was going to do. I was going to go out and write code. And then Gordon Food Service is a local food wholesaler. Um, so they sell to restaurants and maybe not grocery stores, but restaurants. So if you've seen Cisco, but not the Cisco
Mm-hmm.
networking, but SYCO, like think that was Gordon Food Service, and they're mainly in the Midwest here, headquarters in Grand Rapids. And I started as an intern there in my last year of college, writing code. And then I graduated, and you can't really be an intern if you're no longer in college. It's sort of contradiction of terms. And so they made me a beautiful offer to be like, hey, we'll keep you as on a contractor. And I thought, let me tell you, I thought, oh man, they were going to pay me like $100 an hour. And I thought, oh, that's amazing. Or no, was it 50 bucks an hour? I was like, that's crazy. And then you realize all the taxes and insurance you have to be a single contractor. Like, oh, okay, that's not bad, but not quite what you sounds a lot better when it's $50 an hour. But they did that, and then they had this what they call so Grand Rapids is a small city,
Mm-hmm.
and there's only so many large companies, and so word kind of gets around, and so it's actually known in Grand Rapids as like Black Tuesday or something. They pulled um, they pulled everyone into a big room and said, "You got good news and bad news." Uh, you know, Actually, there's no good news. A bunch of you are going to get fired tomorrow.
Oh.
Um, and I actually, so that's actually known in Grand Rapids. I was actually a wave of contractors about 2 weeks before that, where they're like, hey, at the end of this month, you don't have any, we don't have any work for you as a software engineer. And I was like, oh well, I'm kind of bummed out. And I'm like, but I mean, it's the 2003 or something like that. It's like
Mhm.
that's fine. I'll bounce back and find a job. But literally that night that I heard this news, I was singing. This might surprise you. I was actually in a choir practice, and a guy next to me say, "How's your day going?" I was like, it's kind of a rough day. I just got effectively laid off. I still got 2 weeks, but Not a great day, right? I mean, normally you'd be like, oh, I'm fine. It's like, no, it sucked. I got fired today. And he's like, well, we're actually we're trying to hire a system administrator. And so that's how I actually ended up. So that was Baker Publishing Group, which is based in Ada, Michigan.
Hmm.
And that is how I started like a 15-year uh, plus dalliance at the time
Hmm.
into system administration. It was really like there was no coding involved. It was just, hey, can you manage devices? Um, and the kind of funny backstory there is the guy they had before me was apparently just a raging.
Oof.
I mean, like I stayed there 10 years, and people still would tell me stories like 5 years in of this guy, and just how awful of a human being. He was that prototypical, like 90s, what is it, Nick Burns, boof, kind of guy. And they got rid of him because he was so toxic, and they just would not hire another person for like 5, 10 years. They just patently refused to have any kind of actual in-house IT people. Um, and so that's when I joined. Uh, and then I spent 10 years there, and it was that's not everything I know about system administration came from there. In fact, yeah, but that was my formative experience. I spent 10 years there at a small org. That is where, and I started there. They were using Citrix, so they were using Apple. Oh, I'm going to get this wrong. Some Apple fanboys. They were using like some Apple CEs, like 80s era Apples, that with only like one mouse button on it, like the beige ones. They were using them as thin clients for Citrix, um, and there was no systems management beyond like, well, it's Citrix. They weren't even joined to a domain. There was no domain. There was no centralized updates at all. It was all just like we got a bunch of machines and we installed the Citrix client on them, and I guess that's how we do computing now.
So then how did you learn like, well, I'm gonna back it up a little bit
Mhm.
because wow, is that a switch from a software developer to a system administration?
Yeah, yeah,
So your mindset was probably like, okay, I'm going from ones and zeros to hardware now. How was that transition like?
yeah. So the funny thing is how do I say this? Um, so I ended up going into software engineering, and then I'll get to like the system administration.
Mhm.
This is like my dad. So my dad is an auto mechanic. His dad before him was a cab driver, then turned auto mechanic. I grew up actually Clarence's. If I didn't mean this, but like Clarence's Service Center is the shop. That's actually my grandfather, who died in the '90s, the late '90s. But we are a family of mechanics. We like to look at complex systems, understand how they work, so that we can figure out how to fix them, like where the fault is, and then go and fix it. Like that. That's just like in my DNA somewhere. And so like I thought growing up, I actually thought I of course I would take over my dad's business. And there's a part of me that's still sort of sad I never did that because what happens next, right? Um, but at some point, my dad's like, well, I'm in my 50s and I'm sitting under. We talked about you living in Minneapolis. I lived in Southern Ontario. Like I'm 45, getting dripped on by cars in the winter. Um, what about this computer thing? Maybe maybe that would be interesting. And all this leads like what I found out at some point is like it's the same thing. It's a complex system that I'm trying to get in my head so I can figure out where the fault is, so we can hone in on how we fix it. And so being software engineering is that as well, right? Complex system, get in your head, and how do you build it or how do you fix it? But that is also what being a system administrator is. Often it's okay. How do I get this complex system that is networking and networking and hardware and software and OS and the apps on top of it, and then solar flares, and how do that all go in my head? And this user has this issue, and it's like, okay, how do I go fix it? And that's what I love. So the transition from being a software developer to like being a IT admin. I actually kind of thought, oh, it'd be super fun. I'd be kind of the jack of all trades. I could do because I was going to do networking and I was going to do yeah, I had to sort of manage Citrix and do troubleshooting. I had to do printers. Oh God, printers. Um, um, and then also we had this thing called FileMaker Pro, which is sort of like a cross-platform version of Microsoft Access. And so like they had this big database system. So I got to scratch that itch a little bit of doing some quasi development in FileMaker Pro. Um, and yeah, so like that transition was actually pretty easy. What happened over time was like, oh, I want to actually write. Like I kind of started getting an itch to write software again, to actually to because one of the beautiful things about software, writing software, is you get to like it is a creative endeavor that like okay, I spent time. It's the same thing with scripting, so I don't want to like it's like
Mhm.
like people that write PowerShell. It's like well, this didn't exist before, and then I spent like a bunch of time, and now a thing exists, and that is its own fun creative endeavor. I'm a huge fan of MythBusters and a huge fan of Adam Savage. And Adam Savage, if those that don't know, like he talks a lot about making and being a maker. And often we think of that as a physical thing, but his thing is like all creative arts are making. And so software engineering is making. And so um, I had that itch, and I found a way. We can talk about it later to start scratching that itch. But I was in system. I did that system administration at that job, that place for 10 years. It was really small. It was like um, two different physical locations and like 150 endpoints.
And so, was it only you running that shop, or was there like another senior sysadmin, that kind of took you along their under their wing to show you the ropes?
No, I mean it's a okay. So we had it was a publishing company, so Baker Publishing Group. You can go look up; they still exist.
Mhm.
They are a publishing company. They make books, and so they had a large. So they had a warehouse and a whole bespoke software running on an AS400 or an I series, if you prefer, written in was it Pascal or COBOL? Could be COBOL, and but it was built and had been built for 20, 30 years specifically for book publishers. Um, and so my coworker who was kind of doing the IT before, like that was his thing, right? Like he knew how to run that system, he knew how to troubleshoot that system. And so that's what he spent most of his time on was like making the actual um, how do I say it? Like how do we the software that ran the warehouse
Mhm.
and orders and all and customer service, all of those things. That was his focus. And so like that's when like he just simply couldn't do so his secondary duties
Mhm.
were what became my primary duties. And so no, he didn't really show me how to do anything because his like this is what he wanted to do, right? Like he was like, well, this is my expertise. I'm going to
Mhm.
work on this software, and I need somebody else to do all the stuff I don't really want to do. So no, I was very much left to my own devices, which was fun. My boss, I've been super lucky in my career. Um, I have learned that your boss like makes or breaks whether or not you have a good time. You can love what you can do, but if your boss is a raging jerk, like it's not going to it doesn't matter how good the pay is. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
how much you love what you're doing. Like your boss can really make or break it. And I've been super lucky. That boss didn't really know what I did. He was kind of our accounting person, and he didn't know what I did. Didn't want to know what I did. Did he just wanted to make sure that nobody was angry at him for on my account.
Mhm.
And so he was super hands off, and I was left to my own devices to do what I wanted to do, and that was really really fun for 10 years.
So being at a small shop and you kind of don't have that mentorship within, how did you kind of start learning like some of the best practices or, some of those other intricacies that, you know,
We
the
did.
sysadmin has to learn?
The answer is I didn't. We didn't do anything in best practice there. I mean, that was, that was kind of I may have stayed in that job too long. Like, there's a lesson there. I was there for 10 years, and I liked the people I worked for. I liked the mission of the company and all that jazz. but at some point it's like it was too much of the same kind of problems, and because we were using Citrix,
Mhm.
and that was intentional, the organization itself didn't want, like they fought that they the you know how to say, the president of the company
Mhm.
fought tooth and nail to not hire me in the first place. And that wasn't personal. He just didn't, right. He just
Mhm.
didn't want another jerk. But
Mhm.
also, like, he's like, we're a book publishing company. I don't really ever want to have discussions about IT. Right. That he's
Mhm.
just like, it's just a missional kind of thing. Like, I don't want 5 people in IT because that means we need to think about IT. And the last thing I want to do as a business is think about IT. And so he had that real mentality, and that meant just like, we didn't really fight on budget a lot,
Mhm.
but there wasn't well, let's do best practices. It was always, well, what can we do? It's where I learned how to make do with baling
Yep.
wire and bubble gum.
Mhm.
Um, like to my real origin story is is in the middle of that. At some point, I had that itch for software development,
Mhm.
and we had started replacing all of the old Mac or Apple devices, and we had some really old thin clients. And the price of those were just like a thin client was like $200 or $300. I could buy a full-fledged PC for like 400
Wow.
off of HP, right? And
Mhm.
again, I didn't need power. Like I didn't need any, like these were essentially thin clients that could ideally also run Internet Explorer. Like that was
Mhm.
that was all I needed. And so we started buying these, but then I realized I had this problem. Oh, now I have 150 Windows devices in 2 different locations. And while they generally are just being used as thin clients, they still have an OS and they need to be updated. And so that's actually when I installed my first ever instance of actually it was SUS, which was and then it was SUS, and then it was supposed to be WUS, Windows Update Services, and that
Mhm.
ultimately became the first release of Windows Server Update Services, WSUS. So I actually installed like I think release candidate 2 or something. I could be wrong on that, but it was like one of the early release candidates 2 of WSUS, and I installed that on the one sort of server we had on prem and used that to start like actually tracking and patching all of these thin clients, which were really like Windows XP devices.
Were you and right? I might not know. I might say this incorrectly. Were
That's
you
fine.
managing these devices with Active Directory? Were you running Configuration Manager?
Nope. No, not at all. That like there was no domain. Like
Mhm.
we did because it was all Citrix. Like I shouldn't say that. There was a domain, but those endpoints were really thought of thin clients. They weren't connected to that domain. They were um, the the Citrix servers and the Citrix servers and they were joined to a domain, but not all of the endpoints. They were really thought of as somewhat disposable. Also, just because I was too dumb and I probably should have like known like, oh, okay, I will go join these to the domain. Um, but because we were such a hardcore Citrix shop, we didn't. That's what I mean when we didn't do best practices. Um, but the problem I had was okay. So I was doing okay just deploying operating system updates, and I had reports, which again, coming from nothing, because I came from nothing, was like, this is awesome. Like WSUS was amazing. Hey, it was 2004, 2005. Give me a break. It was truly amazing. But I was like, oh, but then that's when people started wanting, like having preferences for browsers. So that's when everyone's like, oh, Internet Explorer 6 sucks. Or maybe it was 5 at the time. Like, I want Firefox. And of course, because everyone had admin, people just started installing things on their box, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It was the early aughts. Like, of course, everybody had. It was XP. Everyone, they needed local admin. Or at least you didn't even think that maybe I should take it away, right? This is before some of those times. And so everyone had admin, which meant they installed whatever they wanted. Adobe Reader was another one. I mean, we were a book publishing company, so like PDF reading was kind of key. It was a thing that everyone needed to do. And so I would literally every month I would like print out the whole list of devices. I had an Excel spreadsheet that I had every device in, and I would print it out, and I'd walk around with a thumb drive that had loaded all of the latest installers for. And yeah, but once a month, I just walk around the building nonstop all day, looking for somebody to like leave their computer unlocked. Which I mean, your best practices, right? Like they had to basically leave their computer unlocked, or I could come in and I could log in as admin. But like I was just waiting for somebody to like be away from their computer, and so they'd come back and I'd be on there and I'd be like installing all of this stuff. Um, like it was literally Sneakernet. That's exactly how I started. And I thought, man, this is dumb. How do you solve this? And so I went on this thing called the internet, and I started searching, and I was like, oh, okay, there's this thing called System Center Update Publisher, which is really my first ever introduction to what is config manager. And I was like, oh, this seems awesome. But then I was like, oh, wait a minute. The license specifically says you need this thing called SCCM. I was like, I don't even know what that is. I don't know how I would buy it. And so what I actually did is wrote an open source implementation of the WSUS API. So I think I might still own this domain. Localpublisher.org, I think, goes to me. Um, and I haven't looked at that code in over a decade, but it did the same thing that SCUP does, which is call the WSUS APIs to push your own apps into it. And that's like I remember when I built that, that's when I kind of became like drunk with power. It's like, oh my goodness, like specifically scale, right? Like because everything under that, like I'm going around to machine, like this just feels stupid. And then
Yeah.
you're like, holy I remember the first time I pushed out like an Adobe Reader patch, and it like I literally just started walking around looking at people's computers, and I saw it installing, and like instantly, completely drunk on power.
And it's crazy, like once you realize the time amount saved before the
All
before
right.
the process, and
Yep.
then after you
Oh,
find that out, you're like a light bulb goes off, you know?
yeah. Right. And that was not too long after that. I had a friend of mine who worked at a large Midwest retailer here called Meyer, not Fred Meyer like they have out on the West Coast, but Myers, Meijer. Yes. Um, and he was like, "Oh, you got to come work here. We've been trying to hire somebody for a long time, and we can't find anybody." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm working this like rinky dinky 150 endpoint." He's like, "Whatever, come on over." And that was like I should have done that. If there's any lesson, I should have done that like 5 years before that, because that was a real step. That's where I actually learned. Um, I learned so much there in terms of architecture, doing things at scale, and what an actual enterprise needs. Because that place was, um,
Let's see. I
did that
think
just
I
lose you?
cut out. Um,
Well,
let's see.
Fabian has left the chat. I don't even know we're still recording. It is recording. Hi, everyone. I'm going to give him a second to come back. Why don't you join me in taking a beverage? It's not awkward if you don't make it awkward. Fabian's making it awkward. He's going to have to do some editing now. Did I lose him or did he lose me? We may never know. You dead, Mom? Or did I take that? Exhibit A, fam. Check your internet. Oh, 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 oh.
I'm
There's
I'm back.
Fabian.
Oh my goodness.
Somebody's going to get to do some editing. I tried
and
to
I
keep it going, but I mostly failed.
and I think I might.
You think you what?
I might be echoing.
You're good at my end. I have a headset.
Let me reconnect. Be right back.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. We're professionals, people. We do this for a living. Don't try this at home.
Oh, computers.
What do you want me to do? Go home. Show's over. Go. Shoo. Far too many of you won't even get that joke. To be young.
I'm back.
And he's back.
Oh,
Wow.
man.
He's a good thing we don't suck
That was awful. I'm sorry,
at
Brian.
being connected to. Oh, don't need to apologize. I'm surprised. I live in an actual veritable city, but you would think my internet is like third world country level stuff. Like it really. Recently, I was offered like an upgrade to 100 megabits a second, which is double what I had before. I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And so the guy came and he had some difficulty, and he's like, well, yeah, some panel thing's not going right. So I was talking to him. He's like, well, when do I get fiber? And he's like, oh, come here, come here, come here. Brings me to the end of my driveway, and he's like, see that pole at the end of your road? I was like, yeah. See that orange bit? He's like, yeah, that's fiber. It's like, okay, but
Ooh.
when does it come here? He's like, I don't know, maybe never. Thanks. Thanks. So I could literally, like I could. So I'm actually facing a window here. If I looked with the right set of eyes before the leaves come in, I could literally see fiber from where I sit. But it doesn't help me at all. And so every once in a while, I have that same experience. I totally drop off. Okay,
Oh,
okay. So
man.
we're gonna do this.
You. Yep.
So what I was saying was, and scene. Um, what we were talking about was, you know, when so I was at a small company
Hmm.
and I stood there a little too long, I think. And then I went to this larger company. They have 260 retail locations, 5 to 6 distribution centers, like 220,000 employees. I didn't have that many devices because most of those retail employees. So,
Hmm.
but we were talking, 30, 40,000 devices, a bunch of different departments that didn't like to talk to each other, or want to do business with each other. Um, and so like, and what was really important were two things. One is again, really like a smashingly good boss.
Hmm.
I will be forever indebted to him. Um, he had this. He's one of the unicorns that was a software engineer for years, and then decided he actually liked managing human beings. Um, I know, right? Like at some point, I'm like, I don't understand your career
Hmm.
trajectory. Um, he's like, well, Bryan, I realized at some point that I get the same endorphin hit watching one of my employees succeed than I did when code compiled.
Hmm.
And I'm like, those are words, but like, what? Like, that is absolutely bat
Gold.
crazy insane. Yeah. I mean, it's gold, but I'm like, I don't understand. Like, how can you be the same person? I don't understand the same person can have those reactions. Like, I got into computers because I don't like people. I thought that's why we all got into this. I mean, it's like, didn't you get into software engineering specifically so you could just type all day and not talk to humans? It's not what I know it's why I'm here. But so he was great. But then I was also on an amazing team of people that had worked in that industry for a long time and had worked at scale and super crazy high availability. So we were so again, Myers was a very large here in the Midwest retailer. Things just didn't go down ever. We were kind of weird in that there was no tiering system. What I mean by that is usually have like a tiering system, like this is a bronze system. It can go down like 9 hours a month or a year or whatever, and then this is like silver, but gold, like gold never goes down. And we didn't do any of that. We had two data centers um, right across the street from each other. Everything you built had to be as redundant and highly available as humanly possible. We actually, one of the more fun things I've ever got to do in my career was they implemented an actual um, an actual disaster recovery exercise. They would pick one night a year, I think it was, and they would literally um, they would change the routing tables, I think it was, and effectively just completely in an instant cut off the main data center. Right. And we were a 24/7 org at that time. So like,
Wow.
right, exactly. So they did plan it, right? It was like, okay, we are going to do this at like 9 at night in uh, or whatever it was. But in the whole, so it was all hands on deck. People had to go there and like every system had to check in. So every kind of major system had somebody who would check in. And so they would all do their disaster recovery plans. They would move it over all to the other data center. They would do their validation, make sure it all checked out. Um, and then they would start, then they would light it back up and run it in two data centers. And that was, I wish I was there for the early days because this may shock you, but it went really poorly the first couple of times, like really, really bad, which was the whole point.
Mhm.
Because by the time I got to it, which was like 5 years into them doing this exercise, it was kind of like a party. Like people were like, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes things would kind of go wrong,
Mhm.
but it wasn't like they typically weren't major. But yeah, everyone bought food. You were staying. It was like an all-nighter at work, it was a dry all-nighter, which okay, fine. But I mean, it was an all-nighter at work with your coworkers. So that was really fun. And I learned so much from having like I was focused on endpoint management, but the rest of the team there was the storage guy and there was the networking guy. We had the cert guy, like Norm, our cert guy, has forgotten more about certs than I'll ever know in my life. And so it was always so much fun to have those people like, hey, I had this thing, and like they were experts in their fields. Um, and so like being on that team, I just learned so much in the 3 or 4 years I worked there. Um, and I had a great boss. So yeah, that's where I learned config manager. So I the atypical story of config manager. Config manager usually is, hey, the last guy quit, and you are now our config manager, system administrator. Um, we were an Altera shop. We were our semantic management platform, if you prefer. Um, and we were huge into it. The guy that I sort of was hired on to sort of not replace, he was literally going to have a heart attack any day, just from the stress of being a system administrator. Like
Yeah.
seriously,
Yeah.
like he took his job very personally, and allowed people to dump
Mhm.
on him nonstop. And I love the guy. He's the most one of the most lovely human beings I know, but like very stressed out. He's like, okay, you own Semantic now. And it's like, okay, that's fine. That's interesting. And then we went to this event and some Semantic event, and they're like, hey, we're killing off PC Anywhere, and here's our like roadmap for the future of this product. And we're like, ooh, this isn't good. And so my boss was like, wait a minute, don't we own Config Manager? I'm like, I think we do. He's like, good. Does it have a remote tool? And I literally had to like, I don't know. I went and looked. Like, yeah, it does have something called remote control. He's like, okay, good. We're going to go implement that. You might want to find somebody to help you get it set up. So go get a proposal. First time I ever made a proposal for more than like $1,000. It was like $60,000 engagement to bring somebody in to help us set up Config Manager for the first time. And this was 2015, late
Wow.
2015. And so midway through that engagement, current branch was released. And I'm like, and they're like, well, do you want to put the current branch? I'm like, I think so. Like, why would we do 2012? Because right, 2015, that already feels kind of old. I'm like, well, let's put the current branch in. Um, and this is a piece of advice I'd give everybody. If you have that kind of engagement, you have somebody coming in or a consultant, and they're going to
Mhm.
set something up to you, ask them so many questions that they just wish for death at the end. And that, like, uh, what's his last name? Adam Bell, I think it was. I actually gave him like, I joke, I gave him palsy. He woke up towards the end of our engagement, and he had, I think, what's called Bell's palsy. Like half his face
Mhm.
was paralyzed, and I swear I did it to him because I was just like, there was no setting he got to choose, and I'm like, why that one? Why not the other two or three? Right? Like I made him explain everything he did, and we got along. But like I'm sure that was sort of more annoying than just like, well, this is what we do. You know, uh, let me just do it the way we'd like to do it.
Mhm.
And I learned so much.
Mhm.
Like I got a master's course in like setting up config manager and using it through that engagement. And that is like it is like you had to do it right. You had to be
Mhm.
like, well, we sat down. He's like, well, I'm picking this radio button. He's like, well,
Mhm.
there's two other radio buttons. What do they do? And sometimes he didn't know. And
Mhm.
so it's like, well, let's go read the docs. Like he would read it. We'd read the docs together. And we'd be like, well, and then you get into like, well, what do you think that actually means? Because that's what the docs say. But what does that mean?
Mhm.
And so like we had a good time getting that set up and set up and running the first time. And that was also my first time going to MMS, the
Mhm.
Midwest Management Summer. Someone had never went to the Vegas edition of that, the actual Microsoft version. But I think I went to the second one, and I went there because the guy that was doing the engagement, they're like, "Hey, by the way, in 2 weeks, he's actually can't be here for that week. You're not going to pay for it, but like,
Yep.
he's going to be missing because we're sponsoring this thing over in Minneapolis, and we have a an extra ticket as a sponsor. Like, do you want to go?" I'm like,
Wow.
sure,
Yeah.
why not? Um, but you have to understand, I showed up at MMS. I had only seen the Configure Manager console 2 weeks before I arrived for the first time ever. And I get there, and I will remember it's Tom DeGrief and Kim Appelfins doing like a 400 level deep dive into the state messaging system. And that was, I think, on day three or something like that. And that's about when my like I actually felt my brain just start oozing out of my ears. Is like I couldn't take any more, and I was like, this is. But I loved it, but like literally, there was no more room up here for any more
Mhm.
information. Um, and that got me hooked on the community that
Mhm.
existed there and that I found outside of it. And so that's how I fell in love with the community,
Mhm.
config manager in specific. But that all came at the right time after I also like learning how to do things at scale and learning, oh, okay, it's not just, again, I was the director of um, I was the director of IT at Baker Publishing Group, where I was the only person. Okay, I directed nobody, but I could make up my title, so I could be a director. But that's where I learned at Meyer. That's where I learned like scale and enterprise. And okay, here's how you interact with the security team, or don't interact with them. Here's how here's what it takes to get networking done. Why it's like, hey, it's no longer I just go and do things. It's like, well, there's a whole political and technical environment in which you operate, and you need to learn to navigate both of those things.
Yeah, especially like just hearing from 150 person shop to right not learning the or not even
Oh
like
yeah, no,
you don't
yeah,
you don't know what you don't know, right? It's like
right,
you get tossed in there, you're just probably trying to put fires out of people who are like, hey, I need this, you're somebody's telling you this needs updating, so
yeah.
you're just kind of all over the place.
Well, I pushed back when they were trying to hire me, and my friend was like, "Dude, like this was an architect role. It wasn't. They had a first and second level of support, right? And it's like, well, this is at best third level, but you shouldn't get too many calls. But you're going to architect systems. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? And like 3 years ago, I'm literally running around with USB sticks to machines. What do you think? How do you think I'm going to architect anything? Um, but it goes back to my whole analogy of complex systems and getting in your head. Like that's
Mhm.
where I learned that my dad and my grandfather and I all do the exact same job. We have the same job. It's just the way what's the word? It's the context in which we do that job.
Yep.
And so I learned that, okay, yeah, I could do this. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I screwed up so many things. Um, and I did learn at some point, just kind of being boldly wrong sometimes is be humble about those mistakes, but like don't not do something because you think what's the right way? It's just like, well, just give it a shot. Like just try it. And if it fails, okay, it fails. And then be like, oh, well, that did, like that works. Or even sometimes you just have an opinion. And in our industry, sometimes you have a choice. You can ask people for advice and they'll be like, and you'll get crickets, or you can just be like, hey, I think X should be Y, and like people come out of the woodworks to tell you why you're wrong, and will happily spend an hour explaining to you why you are the dumbest human being on the face of this planet, and you should feel bad about having that opinion. Uh, and like I have found that to be very instructive and actually helpful because you take the like the personal attacks out of it, and you're like, okay, like this person actually you know, did they put a reasoned argument? And they would have never ever done that if you had just been like, hey, can someone explain to me how this works and why, you know, you would do X versus Y and what the trade-offs are? Like nobody's gonna give you an hour of their time um, uh, uh, to be nice, but like everyone's happy to tell you you're wrong and in
Oh yeah.
excruciating detail why you are wrong.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've been on Reddit, even Discord. Like some of these responses are brutal, but they are
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, and that's um, you talked early on about thick skin, right? Like that's one of those things that people have to learn and but also like in IT be aware of. Like, yeah, I mean, let's go back to what I was saying. Like the guy that preceded me at my first job, right? He was a jerk, and I don't know him personally, so like I can't really speak for whether it's true or not. But like obviously people's interactions with him, they came away thinking he was a jerk. And I've seen that happen later in my career. Oh, that guy's really, but I'm like, but you understand what a system administrator go through? Like nobody calls you up to say like, good job, right? Like it's it's that's across the board in IT. The certs guy, the storage guy, the networking guy, like none of these people get a pat on the shoulders when they go like 3 months without an incident, right? You just get when things break. and that is your role, and that can make you uh, a particularly crotchety person.
Mhm.
And I don't blame anyone for it. Like
No, no.
it sucks. You have to sort of find the reward in the work itself. It's like I take pride in the fact that this worked so
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'm gonna bring it back a little bit to
mhm.
you. Like, we're talking about community. I think, like when you were at MMS,
Yeah.
was there anybody there or like anybody you met at your first MMS that you were like, these are my people, like these are, you know, right?
So it
Because
was, yeah.
you keep coming back, So who did you
So
meet, or like what are some of the things that?
yeah. So in the first one, it's not about necessarily the people I met.
Mhm.
It was actually the audience, right? So it's really the I mean, it was a group of people you were watching, we were attending these sessions with, and that they were interactive, right? You could, like, people were asking questions during the session, and there was back and forth with the presenters. Um, I mean, Kim Opelfins, if he watches this, like he'll laugh. Like I was in awe of the guy. It's like, and Johan Ardmark, I was like, oh my goodness, those guys are up there and they're talking about, and they must know everything. Um, but honestly, but then you listen to the questions of the people in the room and you realize, oh man, like a lot of these people know a lot of things, but also they've all gone through a lot of the same pain, and but they live a life that I live. Like this is really our tribe, and and I kind of like that's what I kind of fell in love with, which is like we did the bird. They've called them different things, but like the birds of the feather session, where it's just like you get together and be like, yeah, we all. You remember when that stupid thing happened, and everyone just like, yeah,
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and and what I like to say in IT is like we've all we've all fought the same fights.
Hmm.
Um, we just differ in our win loss ratios. So some people are more successful, and sometimes that has to do with their personality, like they were able to navigate that situation or that political situation better. But sometimes it has nothing to do with the person; it's just the org. Every org is different, and so there's some guy who's in some VP role, and he's just not going to do something, even if it's the right thing. And you know, you have to sometimes find your peace with that, right? Like, hey, I know what let me rephrase it. Often IT people, we agree what the right thing to do is. Like
Hmm.
there's some argument about what the best way to do it, but we all agree you should remove admin rights, right? Like we no longer really having those deep arguments. It's just, can you do it or not? That's that who that's not up to you, right? That's up to your org. And so, we've all fought those fights, and some of us has won, some of us have lost, but we all have the same battle scars, and that's what helped me then. I mean, I only became a speaker at MMS because ultimately, as much as I loved the job, I was really admire. They again pulled us in a room. this is a this is a
Oh
recurring theme.
no.
Pulled us in a room, and hey, we got good news and bad news. Um, Bad news is you're all fired. Good news is you're all working for IBM tomorrow. Um,
Wow.
yeah, they kind of sold us off to IBM, and so I was like, oh, okay. So I'm talking to IBM. I was like, oh, can I go to this conference? And like, not if we're not paying for it. Like, no way. And so I submitted to be a speaker, and they accepted. It was the only way I was going to get to go to MMS. And I literally bricks up there. Um, but at some point it kicked in, which is that first experience of being there myself. It's like, wait a minute, like this is our tribe. Like nobody, I don't know. Sorry, there's some things I might know that some people in here don't know. But if like we all sat around together and just had like an open conversation, like somebody, there's nothing I'm ever going to say that there's not one person in the audience who didn't know that, right? And yet, um, and we've all fought the same fights. We're all in the same tribe. Nobody's really out there to be, to be a jerk.
Hmm.
And so, if I can share what I know, it's probably news to at least hopefully one person. Hopefully, what I say is news. There's something in there that's new to somebody. I don't know everything. And the best kind of sessions come out when like somebody in the audience is like, well, I face that same thing and I fixed it this way, right?
Hmm.
That's the best, and that really does happen at MMS. And like I really like lured me into the larger community of like, oh, okay, these are people that really are going to help each other out. And like I said, we've all been in the trenches.
So, in what year did you first start presenting then at MMS?
I want to say it's either 2017, I would guess. I think that was 2017. Yeah, man. Okay. Yep. 2017 and it was just that, like, it was just like if they didn't select me, and they had no reason to, because I didn't know any of those people. Really, I had I'd spoke at a user group here that was in Grand Rapids. I went down to Johan's group and I spoke there. So like, you know, they had no reason to pick me at all, but they did, and it was great because if they didn't, like, I would not have, like, I just wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have been able to afford it at that time. Um, and I do remember the first time getting on stage, and my brain just like recoiled in fear, and I started swearing. Um, and I'm not proud of it, but like, like then I got a laugh, and so like I kept doing it, and so at some point, Greg Ramsey comes up with a sign halfway through my first session, and says like, "Please stop swearing." And for those of you who didn't know, Greg Ramsey was a larger person back then, and he had this look on him that said, "I am going to rip you limb from limb the moment you get off this stage." Uh, and and later that afternoon, they sent out an email to speakers about being professional, not swearing, and I'm like, oh, I'm never coming back here again. I didn't speak to Greg for like 2 years, I think, after that. I just avoided him like the plague. And then I found out he swears like a sailor himself if he wants to, if he's in the mood, and he's just a big teddy bear. So, uh, uh, but yeah, that was definitely my first time speaking. Was quite quite a roller coaster.
Do you remember who you were speaking with and what you were talking on?
Garth, Garth and I, the first one was Garth, because I remember Garth saying, "Yeah, you got to tone that down." What we were probably talking about reporting then. Garth and I did a couple of sessions back then about uh, general reporting, and then one we did specific on software update reporting. So that would be my guess. But then Jordan and I think, I don't know. I had another session later that was with Daniel Ratliff. But the first one was Garth. Yep, I remember that.
Wow, what a first person to get paired up with, Garth.
Yeah, I know, right? For those who may not know, Fabian also works with Garth. So yeah, uh, that was a real thing.
Garth, and I say this in the nicest way possible. What an honor to have been paired with you. That's what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, obviously. Oh, I remember Garth was like, well, we're going to have like one slide for every 5 minutes. And he's not wrong. Like now I could do 5 minutes a slide if I really had to. But at the time I was just like I want like, sorry, what? I'm going to get up and I'm going to have like an hour and 15 minutes. I think they were like 75 minutes the first few years. I'm like, how? And I'm going to have like 10 or 15 slides. Like, like it was a security blanket thing, right? Like, oh man, no, I want to go up there and I want to have like 70 slides so that I'm like absolutely secure that when I get up there that I'm not going to run out of content midway through. Uh, and to some degree, I still do that. That's still that is my security blanket. It's like, oh, I know I have enough content. In fact, I have too much content, so that's sometimes my problem. But that's always more comforting than I do remember one time I got in. It was Arya. Arya and I were talking, and 20 minutes in, and we were to the last 5 slides, and I was like, "Ah, goose is cooked, right? Like this is the end of the road." And then thankfully, she mentioned like this upcoming thing called driver management in Intune, and like the whole rest of the session was just people asking all sorts of questions. Like seriously, that was a session that like got saved by the audience because they just started asking questions and filled up all the rest of the time.
And that's kind of one of the best sessions too, though. Like where it's pretty discussion based at the end, and people are just curious and just want to, hey, Arya is the updates person at Microsoft.
Right.
Who better to ask than her?
Well, and that's what sucked about the COVID times is trying to do like I tried to do some virtual stuff,
Mhm.
and at least if you're in a room, you know if you're dying. Like you just know nobody's asking questions and like people are checking it. Like at least you can like read the room.
Mhm.
I did a couple virtual things in COVID. It was just like I don't even know. I don't know anybody out there. Like there's just no feedback, and it was just brutal to
Mhm.
speak into a webcam for an hour and get absolutely no feedback. Like it just it it I died inside each time I did it, and so uh, I'd much rather I'd much rather die and know I'm dying than succeed but not know it. Like not know until the end. Like I don't know. Was that any good? I don't know.
And so then you're at IBM, and are you still in that
Yep.
system administrator role, architect role at that point?
Yeah, so at IBM, the bad news was you're fired. The good news is you're hired, and for 12 months you are guaranteed to do the same work for the same at the same rate.
Mhm.
Like everything's the same for at least 12 months. Um, we were in not the good part of IBM, the Global Services GSM, I think it was Global Service something, which is now I think it got spun off. But it's basically their outsourcing, like it's their IT outsourcing arm. And it's one of those things where, okay, what did we all do after we got pulled in that meeting? You start Googling like IBM, GSM, and it's just, you're right. It's like Reddit thread after Reddit thread of like, oh yeah, this is a race to the bottom. This is how it's going to work. And, and I would like to their credit, everyone I talked to within IBM, everyone that I talked to, were really honest about how this was going to go down. They're like, yeah, absolutely. You're guaranteed for 12 months, but after that, it's like anything's game. Your best bet is to not work at one organization. You should be working for multiple organizations. Um, and so like it's not just you're not one customer you're tied
Mhm.
to. That's what you got to do. Um, and my one of my many bosses, because I had many bosses, was like, "Hey, I'll learn 15 minutes before you do that you don't work here anymore, and I'll be told to, it's somebody on an Excel spreadsheet like 6 layers up the hierarchy from me is going to decide that you don't work here anymore, and there's, like nothing I can do about it. Always do what's in your best interest for your career,
Mhm.
because we won't necessarily."
Mhm.
And so there were some people that have, so some people from that time did well. Like it's IBM was a big pool to swim in, or a big sea,
Mhm.
and you could go do lots of things. And once you're on the inside, and so like some people I think still excelled there. Other people were like, oh, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing for, until I retire. And 12 months in, they're like, yeah, no, you don't work here anymore. Um, and did a lot of offshoring, which again they were upfront about, like, yeah, we're
Mhm.
totally going to do that. And so that's how I ended up at Recast, because
Mhm.
I was kind of made it known, like, hey, I treated that as like a gift. I have 12 months to find another job. I didn't want to find another job,
Mhm.
um, but I had, what a gift to be basically told you got 12 months to find something else in your
Yeah.
career. And so that's when I made it known that, hey, I wanted to, I needed another job or was moving on. And I think it was Mark Godfrey at Recast was, no, it was Nash Pearson, who's there now at Recast.
Yeah.
He wasn't at Recast then, but he was like, oh, hey, you should talk to Chris Buster. You should talk to this. And then like we connected, and like that's how I went from from being a IT, 15 years of IT, to doing IT, but also writing software for IT people. So like that's so it's such a beautiful arc you could never imagine, which is again, was doing was a software engineer, got told I'm fired literally that night, got a new job. Do 15 years, learn scale, learn large enterprise stuff, cut my teeth on config manager. I think that was around the time, yeah, no, when I was close to when became an MVP, I think at that time, um, and then joined Recast to like take all that experience and try and do something I loved, which is like, let's go solve the problems that I've just spent 15 years in. So like that was like it was such a beautiful match made in heaven that one.
Yeah, and you mentioned Microsoft MVP. Could you tell the people about that if they don't know?
Oh man, how do you talk about it without being like self-aggrandizing and kind of making myself throw up in my mouth? So Microsoft has the Most Valued Professional Award. It's awarded. Um, there's no rules for who gets awarded it. There's technically no quota, um, but you basically have to get nominated by an existing MVP or somebody within Microsoft, and then you have an opportunity to sort of list in excruciating detail all of the all of the things you've done in the community, and then they either award you or not, and you never, it's a bit nebulous. There's no rule, rhyme, or reason. There's no surefire way to become an MVP. Um, but after I think one or two attempts, I was awarded it. It was 5 years ago, so it had to be 20. I think it was 2019, definitely when I was first awarded. And the cool part is that there's some big benefits of the MVP program, at least for me, has been getting to talk to the product team. So you get a personal NDA. So you can have there's different ways to have an NDA with Microsoft, but the MVP program is a very personal one. So I have a personal NDA with Microsoft, and that lets me talk to that lets me leverage some of the people I've gotten to know, and they can actually talk to me about what they're actually building. And when the MVP program is working at its best, and it doesn't always work at its best, I'm here to tell you, but when it's working at its best, it's an opportunity to like give feedback to the product teams that are building the tools that we use on it that I've used for 15 years, um, and at the best help them solve a problem the right way the first time. And so what I mean by that is, hey, we want to solve a thing. Let's call it drivers, right? We want to fix drivers. Um, let's talk about how to do that before they start building it, right? Let's talk about that problem. And the MVP group can be a great resource for that. There's also, if you're, for anyone watching, there's also this customer connection program. Highly recommend that as well. Um, literally anybody. I don't know what their acceptance criteria, but it is not the same as the MVP. You get it. Your organization can join, and it's not quite the same, but it's very similar. You get an NDA, and they will bring to you new products and things they're working on. So even if you're not MVP, highly recommend you go up and sign up for the Customer Connection Program, CCP. Um, yeah. What else do you want to tell the MVP program? It's fun ride. The other big thing for me is like recently there's the MVP Summit, which is an opportunity to actually get to go on campus. So that was for me that was a sucky thing about COVID. Got awarded the MVP, and then literally the moment I
Oh,
did, then COVID hit. It was like, oh man, like I want to go to Redmond and go on campus, right? Like doesn't that like that's just kind of I've built my whole career around the tools written by this company. I want to go and I want to go see where it was built. And so finally got to do that in 2022.
okay, okay. Well, I'm glad you made it there eventually, right?
Yeah.
So, um, I want to bring it back a little bit again too.
Okay.
You mentioned user groups before getting started with MMS.
hmm
Where, what user group did you go to, and how did you learn about them?
Um, how did I learn? It's a good question. So there was a West Michigan user group, but it was actually out of Southwest Michigan. And I forget, I think it was actually probably Johan, I think, came and spoke at it. And because I followed him on Twitter, like it was like, oh, there's this group. I think that's how I got to know that they existed. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna go. So uh, uh, so I attended a couple sessions, and then that user group kind of died. Um, and then there's another one on the east side of Michigan, just called Michigan Smug or Scug, My Scug, I think it is. And I got to know some of the people that run that. And then I also ran my own user group for a few years. I really should get back and start it up uh, for a couple years before COVID. And then COVID just to me kind of killed it. Like we couldn't meet for 2 years.
Hmm.
And I really probably should get back in the swing and see if I can get the band back together and do a user group. Um, but yeah, those are really, really fun. It was part of it's an opportunity just to me, it's always less sometimes about the sessions. It's an opportunity to kind of kick back on usually a Friday afternoon and swap stories with other system administrators. And, ideally get a catered meal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, it's funny because when I go to user group, like our local user group, to me it feels like all these guys and gals are just like my coworkers, right?
Yeah, right.
Um, like you mentioned, we're going through the same thing, going through the trenches,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's kind of a mini therapy session sometimes too.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you laugh, but like, so what I do now at Patch My PC is we have a monthly webinar called Patch PC Support Group, and I don't say that to promote it, but it's like that. That's where we came from, right? Which is like, okay, like it's therapy. When we get together as system administrators, you can do a little bit of therapy, and sometimes it's just about bitching about, your job. And everyone, every job has that. Don't get me wrong. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
IT's not unique in that, but like, it there's a certain catharsis that can happen when a bunch of IT guys get together and you start swapping stories because everyone has like kind of a version of that story. It's like, oh yeah, we've all, who hasn't done some kind of version of, yeah, I released this to everything, and I didn't do this, but my predecessor did. He removed the everyone group from the root of C drive, um, which was a way to take down the entire lab. And apparently they had a big pizza party to rebuild every system. Not everybody's done that, but they've done a flavor of that, right? Which is
Yeah.
like, oh, you hit enter, and then you're like, wait a minute,
What did I just do?
what did I just what did I just do? And so there's sometimes a little bit of one-upmanship, but also just genuine, like, yeah, yeah, yeah. We've all been there.
We've all been there. What has been your one of the most remarkable or memorable, like, oh crap moments working in IT?
Um, so it was config manager. So this was at Myron. We had a lab. We had like a real lab, like an honest to goodness lab that was supposed to not match production in scale, but in architecture. So I was talking about high availability, right? It's like, well, if you have if you have four DPs for config manager, you don't need four in the lab, but you do need two, right? You do need at least two to replicate that kind of the architecture, if not the scale. Um, and so we had a real lab. And so, okay, I started figuring out how do we patch the lab. And that is when I learned a very quick lesson about what overcommit on virtualization and SANs are, um, which is if you do something on every device at the exact same time, globally, there's this thing called, resource constraints, and all of it. So the disk latency got up into the 10-second realm, which is right about where most of Windows operating systems just decide to completely lose the plot, like just like they don't even crash at that point. It's not a blue like it's not a any kind of screen. It's just frozen. It just sits there and does nothing. And so I thought, and I had tried to. Config Manager has this built-in randomization for 2 hours. So like I had thought about this. I thought I had thought about this, right? Like, okay, it's got a randomization start time of 2 hours. This is great. Um, but what I didn't realize is that was from the deadline and not the maintenance window. And so it's randomized from the deadline. But if that's like 2 hours before, then it's already randomized the 2 hour before. And so when the maintenance window hits, every last machine down to like the millisecond is going to start trying to download data. And then if that was kind of successful a little bit, but then the reboot storm hit. And that's when like the sand just couldn't take it. And so I came in that morning and they're like, what did you do? Like, what do you mean? What did I do? I didn't do that. Like, and I didn't think it was me. And then they're like, I think it was you. And that took a little. I had to eat some humble pie on that one. Uh, and if that wasn't bad enough, I did the exact same thing the next month.
No.
Now I was like, okay, well, obviously we need to stagger this, and I did some testing. I staggered it. I didn't stagger it enough because the same thing. There was a certain amount of death spiral of like at some amount of load, the sand can't handle it. And this is I also learned another thing, right? I was kind of cocky. I was like, well, this isn't my problem. Like, the it's not my problem. Like, it's your problem. Your stupid thing couldn't handle the load. And they're like, yeah, okay, but do you think we're going to spend $500 million because your one thing is going to run the same time every time as where 99.9999999% of the rest of the time is perfectly fine because we don't all do the same things at the same time? Like, which one is going to you think is going to win, Brian? And that's where I'm like, okay, I'm wrong. That's right. We just, systems, and it's actually somewhat unique to us, systems management, the kind of thing that you you do things across at scale across multiple devices, regardless of what those devices are doing, right? Or whatever service that they're offering, so whether it's a web server or a database server or like whatever it is, like even the domain controllers, right? Like you do it across all of those things, and that was a lesson in staging, like okay, and spreading out the load because yeah, individually every machine can do it, but maybe not every machine should do it at the same time.
Man. But the good thing with those is even if you did it twice, right? That third time you're a little more like a little more cautious.
Oh yeah, I definitely arrived very early in the morning the next time to be like, uh, and was very relieved when it did not die on us because they were charting it. Let me tell you, the next time they wanted to know, and they were like they set up monitoring, extra monitoring across all of the VMware stuff and the SAN, and they were watching, um, and yeah, the networking guys too. Oh gosh, that's a whole other.
So, um look, I got another question for you.
Okay.
So, what does Brian do outside of his keyboard?
uh, so the two hobbies I have is brewing beer, which I mentioned. I finished that up. So I like to brew beer. So I actually recently rejoined some homebrew clubs, which is fun. I like so I have a smoker, so I like to
Ooh.
uh, smoke meats. And then the last few years, I've been trying to read all the sci-fi classics. So I've read some of the mainline fantasies, Lord of the Rings and Wheel of Time and a couple of others, and but then I was like, man, I should read the old like Heinlein and Asimov and all of those things. So actually just loaded a whole bunch. Got my Kindle right here, and so yeah, that's it's either or reading, brewing beer, or smoking meats.
Not some bad hobbies.
Yeah,
It
I
definitely
mean,
disconnects you.
what I like to say about yeah, what I like to say about beer is everyone has a hobby, but at the end of mine, I have beer, and I think that makes it superior to almost all other hobbies. Like you could go golfing, and I have golf. I love golfing. No disrespect for someone who wants to go golfing, but at the end of my hobby, I end up with like 5 gallons of beer, and I think that's a hard thing to argue with.
Oh yeah. And then for people who don't know Brian, actually, funny story. One of the first times I met Brian, we were on like a town hall Zoom meeting with like 15, 20 people for our company, and I see this guy wearing a onesie. And I'm like, I don't know what I just stepped into, but I love it. Um, what is the story behind the onesie, and just give us the origin story behind there.
Oh man, okay. So I am a foster. We did my wife and I were foster parents.
Mhm.
Technically, we did it for 10 years, and we had a series of babies. And so babies get the onesies, or like, yeah, they have a onesies. And I did so many diapers and changed so many onesies. I was like, why these things are very comfortable. This looks like I live in Michigan. It gets cold. Like this looks very comfortable. Why do they get to be comfortable? Why can't I be comfortable? Why don't I get to be comfortable like this? This looks amazing. Why am I, And then so my wife, as a total joke, um, post Christmas, she bought on sale. She bought this onesie, and she was going to give it to me the next Christmas. That was the whole thing, right? It was on sale, and then she forgot to buy me a birthday gift. And so in August, which is when my birthday is, she gave me this onesie, and um, and it was supposed to be a joke. And then when it got cold, I started wearing it, and she's like, "Sorry, what? No, you, this was a joke, a joke." Like, but it was the most comfortable thing. I still have it. It has footies on it. Okay, so it has like the full footies. It's the most comfortable thing. And then before I knew it, I owned 17 of them.
Holy cow! Wow, 17.
Technically, I think I actually have a few more because I may have got a box from, I still have some recast ones, I think.
Holy cow, that is awesome. I mean, it's true. You know.
They're, I wear them throughout the winter religiously because it's so comfortable. I mean, why would you not wrap yourself head to toe in a blanket? It just doesn't even.
Oh man. Well, Bryan, I've taken enough of your time.
Oh,
I,
if
dude,
I didn't have a concert, we could talk for hours. I got to go to a concert in a little bit,
you're
but
good.
I talk to you for hours, man.
We have to do this again, man.
Okay.
I love just learning about you, and I just, not every time you get to talk for almost an hour with
Yeah.
with people. So,
Minus interruptions. When you weren't
yep.
here and it was just me talking.
um, but man, I had a blast.
Yeah, same here.
I love learning about your origin story, about the onesies.
I
You
look
know.
forward to season 3 when we can interview you. I want like 8 people all interviewing Fabian.
Oh man, I can't wait. But where can people find you? Um, you know,
I'm
where
right
are you
here.
speaking
I'm here right
next?
now. Where can you find me? So you can usually find me on Twitter. You can or X. I'm also on Blue Sky. Most of the time, though, I'm on Reddit. So I'm the moderator of our SCCM subreddit. Um, I am going to be in Mall of America, so I will be there for sure this year. To be determined. All the other ones. Uh, I hope to be in Switzerland, Workplace Ninja, hopefully, but we'll see. I haven't submitted yet, but for sure, Mall of America. We'll be there in May.
Heck yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to personally. I'm gonna be
Yeah,
selfish. I'm looking forward to seeing you here in a couple weeks.
yeah. Let's have a beer,
So,
man.
we'll grab a beer. I owe you a beer, so I'll see you then, Bryan.
Okay. Thanks, Fabian. Have a good night. Talk to you all
Enjoy the
later.
concert.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Bye.